This is Better Than News, and I'm Joe Darginio with your weekly White House report for the week of January 28th to February 3rd, 2023. While the talking heads are keeping you distracted with the Chinese weather balloon, the president has been confiscating Afghanistan money and sending more money to Ukraine. Take a look. I normally don't pay too much attention to proclamations because they're just words typically. And right out of the gate, of course, they're talking about National Black History Month, legacy of Black Americans. There are some of us who will tell you that black and white use of those terms is a tool that is being used to divide our nation by skin color. Especially if you're invoking the name of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., talking about his birthday in this proclamation. Content of character, that's the bottom line. And particularly these anti-racist teachings ignore that, and they literally talk about judging somebody by the color of their skin. And that tends to be a narrative that the so-called Democrats or liberals, however you'd like to call them, typically push, is the anti-racist narrative, and yet you're dividing people here by black and white. You know, obviously if there's black, they're separate from something else, and that's presumably whites, and however else you want to continue to try and divide our people. We're all Americans. Why are we still looking at their skin color? If you do consider yourself black, I strongly recommend you look into the notion of nationality. Many of the dark-skinned inhabitants of our nation are reestablishing their nationality as being Moorish, M-O-O-R, Moorish. I strongly recommend you look into that. If at all possible, I will have special videos particularly addressing this division of black and white, and how we can hopefully bring it to an end and unite as Americans. So the reason I'm talking about this proclamation is further division. Why do we have a separate Black History Month when that history is part of American history? Why are we separating that out because of the color of somebody's skin? That goes against the notion of Martin Luther King's most famous statement. So we'll go back to this list. Review of military compensation. Hey soldiers, you might be getting a raise, in a nutshell. And we'll jump on ahead to another proclamation, memorandum, basically federal employee benefits. Well, I'm not going to argue against that. Medical Leave Act, another reference to federal benefits. Can't argue really against that. We need to treat people right. So this is interesting though. On February 3rd, the Friday prior to this recent weekend, we have more money going to Ukraine. If you haven't seen my Money to Ukraine video, please watch that, because it talks about the Secretary of State who is being delegated the authority to bring Ukraine another $425 million on top of what's already been $6 billion just since I've started these videos. And lastly, also on February 3rd, notice here and a letter to the House and Senate, and they both basically say the same thing. And this is, he declared a national emergency according to Executive Order 14064 on Afghanistan. And here we are in this declaration. Seems to be the focus is preservation of certain property of the Afghanistan Bank. Various parties, including representatives of victims of terrorism, have asserted legal claims against certain property. We go on to reaffirm the national emergency there. And so, if we go back and look at the notice, if we go back and look at Executive Order 14064, protecting certain property, if we go look in the Federal Register under Executive Order 14064, protecting certain property of the Afghanistan Bank, and this was issued February 11th of 2022, just about a year ago. Secretary of Treasury, in consultation with the Secretary of State and the Attorney General, and we've already talked about the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, in another video. In that video on money to Ukraine, that is, we talked about him quite a bit. And all property and interests of DAB that are held as of this date, of the date of this order in the United States, by any United States financial institution, including the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, are blocked and may not be transferred, paid, exported, withdrawn, or otherwise dealt in, except as set forth in subsections. And United States financial institutions shall promptly transfer the blocked property described in subsection A of this section into a consolidated account held at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So this Federal Reserve Bank, which is a private bank, just in case you don't know, and especially a Federal Reserve Bank of New York, which is a state, seems to be a misnomer. Yeah, so that's all being consolidated into the Federal Reserve, which again is a private bank. It'll be interested to track what happens with that money. So that's what the president's been doing while the media has you distracted with this Chinese weather balloon. Of course, it's a bit of an issue, but they made it a media darling, so you don't talk about these other things that are hiding in plain sight. You just got to do your homework and ignore what the media is feeding you and look at what's really going on. This has been a weekly White House report with Joe Darginio, and this is Better Than News. If your current news source isn't talking about these things, please give me a subscribe and a like, and please share wherever you can, and we'll keep doing this. Thank you for watching.